Let me tell you the story of how after 6 years I was finally considered a senior software engineer. Hello everyone, welcome again to my channel. My name is Carla and today I'm here to share a little bit about my journey to become a senior software engineer. Now you would see that I use this quoting situation a lot, and that's because I think becoming a senior software engineer, being considered one, is actually pretty subjective depending on the type of company you're in and the size of the company and so on. I actually used to think that, after 10 years in the industry, you have to get the title, right? Because it's been so long. But I've learned along the way that it's not necessarily about the time you've been in the industry and more about the experiences that you've had in each of the projects that you've worked on. So my journey began in 2014 when I was getting ready to start an internship in a company back in Venezuela. For this internship, I had to build an Android application of the platform that was used in the company at the moment. But things don't always end up as they should. And of course, being in a small startup, I think at that time it was like 8 or maybe 10 of us, 5 of us who were developers. People left the company, some others joined. Long story short, apart from building an app in Android, I also had to start working in Ruby on Rails, which was the framework used in the backend for the API that we were using. I also remember we used to use Scrum and had all the ceremonies. We had to meet with clients and get some requirements from them, which lets me to think that's one of the places where I started to learn how to communicate with stakeholders. And now let's make a pause here so we can take a look. So I was intended to do one job, ended up doing that job and something else, and also using an agile methodology and also a soft skill, which is learning how to communicate. I spent 2 years in that company after my internship, and that's when I decided to move to Spain to pursue a master's degree in data science. Of course, when I moved to Spain, the first thing I had to do was to get a new job. Back in the day, moving to a new country kind of meant starting from zero again. So even though I had like 2 years of experience on the job, I was looking for junior jobs or maybe junior to mid kind of, and it wasn't really easy at all. I think back then you kind of had to earn the trust of companies, and because they realized that I wasn't from a local university here, I wasn't coming from a university here or had any jobs in Europe before, it was very hard for me to get a job at that time. So what I did is, through university and the master's degree that I was getting, I was able to get another internship in another company completely unrelated to what I was doing. It was about data science. I remember we were using Python, and the idea was to generate some reports for KPIs about the company. At the end, I think we even implemented a very, very, very simple recommender for product related to the business in that company at the time. Now, luckily for me, the team that was working with me in that company was a group of people who had probably 10 plus years experience in the industry, and they've worked in consultancy and now they were working in products, so they've been all over the place. And I remember just paying a lot of attention to what they were doing, the conversations they were having. And one of them actually, I think he kind of took me under his wing, and he was always talking to me about this new technology. Back then it was all about Docker, and he was trying to help me understand how Docker worked. It was also a big boom about microservices. So when they started talking about that, I also started doing some research on myself because I wasn't really working in that product particularly. So then I could start learn them on my own. So I think a big learning I had from that job is that if you have the opportunity, try to find some mentors that will guide you through the process. I don't know. I mean, of course, I think I would have learned about Docker and microservices and whatnot at some point, but because I had this person that was helping me, he wasn't really my mentor per se, but he was just always sharing these little bits of knowledge with me, and I felt like he was mentoring me in a way. So anyways, at some point that internship ended and I had to find another job. So I found a job in a different startup. It was a very, very small technology team, and by very small I mean it was literally just me. In this company, they wanted to have an Android app, an iOS application, a website, and so on, and it was all supposed to be by me. Now, in a previous video I did a couple of years ago, I talk a little bit about the advantages of working in a company like that. It was like a very fast-paced environment and you had to wear a lot of hats. Like I said, one day I was doing the API on Ruby on Rails. The other day I was doing like DevOps and deploying to our servers. The other day I was doing Android. On one hand, it was a bit stressful, but on the other, I think I really learned a lot and it helped me understand what it's like to be in an environment like that. In this job, I also had to definitely improve my communication skills because I was working very closely to the CEO, who was not a technical person at all. So I think that was kind of a struggle for me, just trying to explain all this technical stuff to a non-technical person. So definitely it made me work a lot in my communication skills. I eventually switched to another company that was kind of like consultancy, but it was very small, so it had like a startup spirit. I was supposed to work on Ruby projects, but I could also work on Android projects or even Django projects with Python. In this company, I had to talk with multiple clients, and I remember we were also taking care of their servers. We were using AWS. I think that's where I learned most of the stuff I know about AWS. So yeah, I was going from startup to startup to startup, and I was really missing some stability in my life because in the startup world, they often have to pivot a lot until they find that business model that works for them. So I decided to start looking for opportunities in bigger companies, and I ended up working for a German company where I feel I had to put all of this knowledge that I had from the startups into one place. And not only into one place, but also into a bigger scale. I was used to working with products that had maybe 1,000 or a couple thousand customers at once. And in this company, we were talking about millions of requests, thousands of requests per minute. So that was pretty new for me. Another huge learning from working in a company like that was to understand how the communication worked across the whole company. Before, when you were working in a startup, I was just talking with the person next to me and the job was done. Here, you had to communicate with the product manager, and then the product manager had to talk with other product managers, and then we'll have to deal with other product managers, and then you probably wouldn't be able to do what you wanted to do in the first place. At that time, I was also getting interested in going to tech conferences, and then because of that, I decided that I wanted to do some public speaking as well. As part of my job, I did a couple of internal talks and also some external meetups. 2 years after being in that company, I finally received the news that I was considered a senior software developer. And like I said, I thought getting that title was a matter of how many years I had in this industry, but with my own journey, I learned that this is not entirely true. In my personal experience, I think seniority comes with meaningful experiences rather than time. And of course, time contributes to having more experiences and accumulate them, but I don't think they are necessarily linked together. I've met a lot of people who have been in the industry for only a few years, but they have switched a lot, they have worn a lot of hats, and of course, the more you switch, the more you learn. So they have been already considered senior developers. Funny enough, a few years after being considered a senior software engineer, I actually switched to a completely different role, and I will talk about that in a different video. So for today, I hope that you've enjoyed this video, and if you can subscribe to my channel and press the like button. That would be very much appreciated. See you in the next one.